Suffixes on Segholate nouns. What happens when you add suffixes to Segholate nouns? Let's first look at what they are again, just to remind ourselves. Remember, melech is a Segholate. This is one we always seem to use. King. Melech. And the features of a Segholate are segols in one or both syllables and stress on the first syllable. If you have a guttural, then you have patachs instead. Tend to, so you have something like na'ar. Na'ar meaning lad or young man. There you have patachs. And sometimes, if the first syllable is, or the first vowel is long, then it will stay long. So you have something like kodesh or sefer. Kodesh is also a Segholate. Sefer is a Segholate. Let's see, your long vowel, sefer. So those are Segholates, just to remind you. Now, what happens when you add suffixes to Segholates is the same thing that happens when you put Segholates into the construct form. If you go back to wherever it was we dealt with construct forms, I mentioned briefly that what happens is that in the first place here, the first position, the original historical vowel shows up again. Now, what I meant by that was that Segholates come from actually different types of nouns, but they've all kind of condensed down into this basic form. And it's when you put it in construct or add a suffix that you see the original vowel again. So, for instance, here we have three Segholates: melech, king, and kever, which is grave, and kodesh, holiness, the noun holiness. When you add a suffix to these, this is what happens. The first one, melech, goes to malkecha. Segol goes to patach. Second one, kever, goes to kivrecha. So this one went to a patach, this one went to a hidik. Why? Well, these are the vowels that were there originally, and they're showing up again in this condition. You cannot predict what this is. You cannot look at this and predict what this is. You either have to look it up in a dictionary, or, better yet, pay attention when you're reading, and when you see king with a suffix, you say, oh, okay, this one has a patach. And when you see grave with a suffix, or in construct, you say, okay, this has a hidik. So you're not surprised when you see a change there. Kodesh, kod shecha. Now this is the kametz hatuf, right? CVC, closed syllable, unstressed, stresses at the end, so it has to be kametz hatuf. So the short O, which makes sense. You're going from a long O to a short O. So, in construct, and when you add suffixes, you see the original vowel that was there historically, and you cannot predict what that is. You just have to look it up or notice it when you're reading. Let's look at the full paradigms for a couple of these. A couple of Segholates. So this is melech. You see here, the green one's over here. This is king in the singular when you add suffixes to it, and this is king in the plural when you add suffixes to it. So you see right away that when you add the pronominal suffixes to the singular of Segholates, you see the original historical vowel in all the forms right here, right? When you add it to the plural of a Segholate, when you add the pronominal suffixes to the plurals of Segholates, you only see the original vowel, the original historical vowel, in the heavy suffixes, when you add these hem, hen, chem, hen suffixes here. The rest of these you have propytonic reduction, it goes to a shava. You don't see it. So that's melech. Here's another one. This comes from neder. Neder, meaning vowel. So to make a vowel, V-O-W. So this is the Segholate, and we see that the tzere goes to a hidik. And again, in the singular, it happens in all the forms, and in the plural, it happens when you add the heavy endings. Now, So that's all I really want you to know. Just know that when you add the endings, when you add the pronominal suffixes, you get these historical vowels. You can't predict what they are. Just don't be surprised when you see some changes going on. All I want to do now is just give you a little bit of understanding as to where these things come from historically. So if you're not interested in that, you can just stop right now. It's sort of extra information. What you had originally with a word like king, you had, originally king was something like this. Mal. It started with, you had a syllable that was stressed, and then you had a case ending. For instance, malka. If you go back to the module where I introduced cases, I talked a little bit about this. I showed you what the different case endings were for singular and plural, and I said that they were lost. Case endings dropped off in Hebrew before you get to the text that we have in the Bible right now, today. So, when this dropped off, that was the first thing, is case endings dropped off, then you went to something like this, malk, still stressed, and so the A is gone because that was a case ending. What happens is a helping vowel showed up between here to make it easier to say. So you have, and you had either segol, or if you were dealing with gutturals, you had patach. So you can see the beginnings of a segholate happening here, and so then we get, put that in. Ugh. So still stressed there, mal, lek. And then what happens is the first one tends to harmonize with the helping vowel. Harmonize. And so the A goes to E, or if it's you're dealing with gutturals, it would be that. Me, melech. So malka, drop this, malke, melech. Now I'm not trying to imply that this happened and then 200 years later this happened and then whatever. This is a guess as to what's going on here. But what you can see is that when you add the pronominal suffixes to a word like this, or when you put it in the construct form, you get this thing back. This thing shows up again. What's basically happening here, I think, is that melech, this is an open syllable. When you add these suffixes, or when they go into construct, they become a closed syllable, and then this vowel shows up again. So that's just for those who are interested in how this may have developed historically. But the thing to note here again is just that you add the suffixes, you see the historical vowel, you can't predict what it is. You have to look it up in a dictionary or pay attention when you're reading.